Alright, so for this video I'm going to be replacing the power supply here for this keyboard. It's a Casio Privia PX-110. It has been turning on, and I suspect that it is the DC power supply here. So we're going to try to replace it and see if we can get it working again. And we got two screws here we got to remove. This part just pops right off. There is a little slot in here that they've kind of fallen into. I also see these other screws here. Let's see if we can take them out. Alright, so we got those taken out. This part is a little tricky with this slot here. You gotta kind of have to slide down or slide up. Just kind of have to find the... So you pull it out a little bit and slide down. Let's see how it goes. There we go. Pops out. There we go. A slot here that latches onto here that you kind of have to, pull it out and then pull it down, and then you can pull it out. Something to note is also that there are these washers or screw nut kind of, whoops, that's a lot of cat hair. Don't pay attention to that, and don't pay attention to how dirty the keyboard is. Pay attention that there are these little washer nuts inside here that are just kind of loose hanging, so if you tilt the piano you might lose them, but just keep that in mind. But this is what we're looking for. This is the power supply kind of motherboard thing. We got some wires that are connecting to the keyboard itself. But looks, you can just kind of wiggle these out, so that's not a big problem. Just be a little careful. And I got a tiny little screwdriver here just to help with that process a little bit. Yeah, I probably should have marked them, but I think we're kind of good, and I think that they're kind of self-explanatory. We got a 3-pin over here. We got a 5-pin, 5 cables over here, and 4 pins, so they should just easily go into wherever they need to go. So this is the piece that we're going to be working with to replace a potentially faulty power supply. Alright, so the next step in this process is going to be removing this motherboard piece from its plastic casing. We got some screws here. Look like that's what's holding them in place. There's some screws also here keeping the power button, this little push power button, in place. So we're going to remove those next. Careful in case you lose any screws. Alright, we've removed those screws, and bam, motherboard pops right out. Or I don't even know if you want to call this a motherboard. I don't know what to call things. So, looking at it, we got this kind of, also this metal enclosure thing. It might make things a little difficult. Oh, I forgot about this. I don't know if you can see this on the screen right now, but there's this kind of, I don't know what to call this. This gunk. This non-conductive gunk here. And this is what we want to remove. You can see we got 3 pins that we need to desolder. And the only problem is, let me see if we can see this. So it's gonna be tricky. The tricky part to this is if my focus ring wants to work. So a tricky part here is that you can kind of see there's this, I don't know what to call this stuff, on the board here that's keeping DC power in place, but These are 3 pins that we're going to need to desolder. We're going to maybe try to get this metal casing off too. It might make life a little easier, so let's try that out. It actually looks like the metal casing is soldered into it, so we're going to need to break open the soldering kit to make any kind of progress here. Alright, so I've changed a couple of things around. I changed my workstation so I can get my soldering iron working, and first thing that we're going to try to do is remove some of the solder around this kind of metal case around it. Hopefully that's not a bad idea. Let's see if it's connected to anything. So what we're going to do, we got my soldering iron heating up over here. We got some of this stuff, solder wick, solder wick. It kind of, I forget exactly what how everything works, but this is able to absorb, it attracts the solder, and helps with when you're desoldering anything. Let's see if this is hot enough. Looks like it might be getting there. Yeah, it's getting there. Let's see if we can get these pieces off here. Always be sure to open up a window when you're doing this so that the fumes don't get on you. And if you can see what I'm doing here, I'm trying to put the soldering iron on top, and hopefully it pulls the solder through the solder wick. I want to say this is made out of copper, that's what it looks like, but who knows, man. Also be careful if you've got cats walking around. Get curious on what you're doing. Make sure those contacts are nice and clean. With that being said, I also got some of this lead-free tinning Flux. So you have the solder itself, soldering iron. You get a little dirty and the heat transfer doesn't quite work for melting or getting the metal to a high enough temperature to melt, or the solder rather, to a high enough temperature to melt and then get absorbed. So that's what we're doing here now. Yeah, you can kind of see that all of a sudden, yeah, it's like it's rolling, melting apart. Let's see if we can get the actual, so the DC power supply. That's what we're trying to get off here. And again, I'm not, expert in these things, but I'm trying my best. And I feel like this is worthwhile stuff to learn how to do. So I got my helping hands out here. Hopefully they can lend us a hand. So I got my Flux over here, I got my wick over here. My wick's a little soldered to the board. Hopefully we can release it. Alrighty, so the lighting looks a little different because it is a different day. I struggled so hard to get the old DC power jack off of this thing. I struggled so hard I had to stop filming actually because I was getting too frustrated, but you can kind of see here we're able to remove the old power jack, and it had, you can't really see it now because I messed it up a little bit, but this pin in the center was bent and it just wasn't I don't know, sending power to my keyboard, so I yanked this thing off. So I used the soldering iron and the wick. So yeah, the real trick was making sure that the tip was clean. You can kind of see this black stuff all over it. This is oxidization, and it kind of inhibits the transfer of energy. So I had to clean it off a lot with the tinning Flux. This stuff lead free. Make sure you do better research than I did in buying these kinds of things. You know, I had to kind of shop around, and I forget exactly what resources I used to find stuff out, but that was what was really keeping me off. And I had to have a little towel here, a little wet towel to wipe everything off as I was doing it. So you would have to put it in here, put it in here, wipe it off, put it in here, put it in here, put it in here, put it in here, and then finally was able to really actually get the solder off this thing. I also had to remove this kind of metal casing that has the screw holes in it because it was kind of an enclosure for this piece. And earlier on, I was stressing about these things, whatever this stuff is, this like glue kind of residue that's around here. I just kind of picked away at it with a small little knife, and once I got these connections loose, I literally just pried this thing out. And you know, there's probably better ways of going about this than I did, but hey, this is what worked for me. And now you can see I have this new jack here. Here, I had to buy a whole bunch of these. This is the weird part, and something that you have to also pay attention to, is the size of these pins and the diameter of the plug. You can see the one on the right. This is the one that I removed because it has the bent piece from when I pried it out. You can kind of see that the pin is a little thinner and this one's a little thicker. I could not find replacement pins of this size, and I can't remember what the size that I determined they were, or either one really, but I'll post something up in the edit to tell you what it is. So I ended up having to buy a bunch of these, and you can see it's at least the same, the 3-pin connector, and they came luckily with a whole bunch of nice sized plugs. And by the way, if you're noticing, I'm doing this just on a pizza board. That's how professional I am. So this is the power supply to my keyboard. I'm pretty sure I got this one off the internet from somewhere because I lost mine originally. I've had this keyboard for a very long time. I had to cut off the tip of it because this one now doesn't fit the new ones. So I took one of those pieces. I soldered the red and the blacks together over here, and then I added just some heat shrink, applied some heat, and again, I apologize I didn't do all this in person. This is more to show you that it can be done. It can be done. And so yeah, reusing old parts. And these things, I want to say this whole thing, I can't remember how much it costs. I'll post some sort of infograph. Getting this piece, getting this piece out was the most difficult part probably. And it's been my experience anytime I've had to replace a piece, getting rid of the old solder has been the hardest part. It's definitely worth it at the end of the day. Because I've had this keyboard for a very long time. I don't know how much it would have cost to take it somewhere. Yeah, I think everything, all things considered, didn't cost me very much. So we've installed the new DC port here. I'm going to need to put this piece back on next because it has the screw holes that attach to the plastic frame. So that's going to be the next thing I'm going to do, although I struggle with everything that I do. So there are these little slots here, kind of around, that metal frame kind of sits in. So you can kind of see how it kind of sits in there. So I'm going to need to solder those back in or twist them. It doesn't, I don't think it matters that much because it's not conducting anything. It's just you just want your pieces secure in there. So yeah, I'm going to skip the soldering part of these things. I just don't think it's necessary. Again, it's not conducting anything. Yeah, kind of see that there. Twist that around. And yeah, that's actually good enough for me. I'm not a stickler for things. Yeah, that's pretty much it, and I already tested this out, but I'll go ahead and show you guys what it does work. So you remember, here's where the power goes over here. I'll time lapse through me screwing this all back into place. Alright, so yeah, we got the power supply board back in here. I was thinking about it. I think this supplies power, and then we got like a 5-pin and a 4-pin over here, and I'm guessing it's because it has MIDI and audio signals going through. So yeah, we got this part now. Now we can install it back on the keyboard. Alright, I found a power strip to plug it in, and now moment of truth. Here's the power button. Click it in. Oh, I don't know if you could hear the click, but here we go. So before before any of this, you know, I would try to turn it on and nothing would happen. None of these lights would come on, so it just wasn't getting power, was my assumption. And luckily I was right. Luckily it wasn't anything crazy. It's hard to hold a tripod and play the piano a little bit. But yeah, that's how you can kind of repair a DC power plug on a, what was this? Casio